Whether you're thinking of divorcing your narcissistic spouse, right in the middle of it, or have finalized your divorce, the tactics are the same. If this sounds like you need to know about Christine Hammond's new masterclass series, How to Survive a Divorce with a Narcissist. In this 4-hour video series, Christine Hammond introduces the toxic tactics that narcissists use to abuse, humiliate, and manipulate you, and teaches you exactly how to recognize these tactics and navigate through them with mastery and confidence. How to Survive a Divorce with a Narcissist is a deep dive, a masterclass that'll show you how narcissists use tactics like bait and switch, scare tactics, roller coaster ride, and child's play. It's How to Survive a Divorce with a Narcissist, a 4-hour recorded video masterclass with Christine Hammond. For more information or to purchase today, just go to growwithchristine.com/narcissism. That's growwithchristine.com/narcissism. This masterclass will change your life. Again, that's growwithchristine.com/narcissism. This is Understanding Today's Narcissist. Brought to you in part by PsychCentral.com. And now here's your host, Christine Hammond.
Today's topic could apply to a wide range of people, not just narcissists. But the reason I'm putting it in here is because this is a question I get asked a lot when dealing with narcissistic people, especially those of you who have been in a relationship with one. And the big question is, how do they get away with it? So I'm titling this, How Do Deceptive People Get Away with It? And we're going to talk a little bit about how that happens and what that looks like, because it can be very confusing when you're in the middle of it. So I'm going to share with you a story about David. David was this charismatic leader of a large not-for-profit organization which gave aid and care for the homeless. Over the past 10 years, his organization, under his very energetic leadership, grew substantially as donations increased, new shelters were formed, and thousands of people were assisted. On the surface, things seemed to be above board and working quite well, but it wasn't. Discretionary funds kept disappearing, and despite the increase in donations and efficiency of management, the organization's numbers were constantly in the red. David called a board meeting and openly admitted to having a personal spending problem and laughingly brushed off the organization's issues as people just following his lead. When another board member during the meeting confronted David about another indiscretion of sexual harassment of a volunteer, David minimized it. He teased the board member for being overly sensitive and then openly admitted to his weakness for overspending and beautiful women. He then asked the board for their prayers, saying that he was under attack for being such an effective leader. David said nothing inappropriate was happening and everyone was just overreacting. Yet, there was. The board member hired a private consulting firm to review the organization's statements and found hundreds of thousands of dollars unaccounted for. Then the board member interviewed volunteers who left the organization without warning and discovered at least a dozen cases of sexual harassment by David. The problem was that David admitted to 1% of what was actually happening, so any further accusations would only add to the theory that he was, quote unquote, under attack. David was doing what we call hiding in plain sight. By admitting to his weakness of overspending and admiring beautiful women, He removed the shock value of any discovery. Instead of trying to look perfect, David openly admitted to his imperfections, calling himself humble and human. He even called out other board members who did not have an obvious indiscretion as trying to hide something. So, how is he so successful at this? Here are 5 of his techniques. And again, these 5 techniques could apply to a narcissist, a sociopath, or another person who doesn't even have a personality disorder. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of how this actually happens. So how do you do it? Here's 5 traits. Number 1, he dressed casually. David did not look like the leader of a large organization. He would often wear casual, nondescript clothing with little to no accessories or fancy touches. This gave him the appearance of fitting in with the volunteers. By physically not standing out, it was easier for him to hide the sexual harassment. Many times, the victims were actually unaware that he was even the leader in the first place. They just thought that he was one of the other workers. This is how the sexual harassment cases went undetected and were never followed up with. So the first trait was that he dressed casually. Number 2, he followed the rules. David was known throughout the organization for being a rule follower and very organized. His daily rituals of routine were well known amongst the staff. He was quick to discipline employees or volunteers who overstepped their boundaries and was not afraid of confrontation. By following the rules in nearly every instance, it made it less likely that David would be discovered for embezzlement and sexual harassment. So the second point was that he followed the rules. Number 3, he was inconspicuous. One of the unnerving traits of David's personality was his ability to sneak up on people. Without realizing it, a group of conversing employees would suddenly become aware that David had joined their group. Sometime during the discussion, he had snuck up and joined without anyone noticing. This ability allowed him to become aware of moments when no one was paying attention, and therefore making his criminal acts go completely unnoticed. So number 3, he was inconspicuous. Number 4, he was quiet. When David needed to be charismatic and turn on the charm to increase donations, he would. But the rest of the time, he was very quiet. He even talked quietly and walked quietly. He was very judicious about when he would be energetic in front of others, using it only when needed to attract just the right kind of attention. The rest of the time, he was silent. This extreme difference allowed him to hide in plain sight. Number 4, he was quiet. Number 5, he was agreeable. Although David was not afraid to confront others when they stepped out of line, he was mostly agreeable. His employees found him easy to work with and very accommodating. He said yes more than he said no, which made him an easy boss. However, David was being agreeable to go undetected, not because this was his normal personality. By being well-liked, any accusations against him actually looked like personal attacks and untrue mischaracterizations. Number 5, he was agreeable. Let's go through the 5 traits again. First, he dressed casually. Second, he followed the rules. Third, he was inconspicuous. 4, he was quiet. And 5, he was agreeable. That's how David was able to hide in plain sight. So what happened? Well, even after the board member exposed David, fellow members and employees still believed that David was, quote, under attack. It actually took an outside investigation and a prosecution before they finally saw David for who he was. Sadly, there are so many cases just like this in numerous environments, especially ones which are intending to help others. So this is how a person is able to get away with it. This is how deceptive people do it. They hide in plain sight, giving away only 1% of what is actually going on, just enough so that you know something's not okay, but that you also know that they know it. But then they don't give you the rest of the story. I share with you this article so that you can have a better idea of how it's done, so you will not be fooled the next time it might happen to you.
Thanks for listening to Understanding Today's Narcissist with Christine Hammond. Brought to you in part by PsychCentral.com. For more information, visit growwithchristine.com.